Beep. So Marlon Hoffstadt has been making some dope music, and in today's video I'm going to show you guys a little demo I made for Poppy Trance Volume 2. Today I'm going to be showing you guys some interesting things about the song to add to your repertoire, maybe get inspired of and get a song started, because at the end of the day my goal is to help you guys make the music that you envision. Now the bass is very interesting for me because it's very simple, but it sounds very dope, very crunchy, very old school. Now it's a very basic saw bass. Okay, we can use our sustain, lower it down, and use our decay to control the punch. We're using just the basic saw, and you can go with this one if you want to be exact. Arm face down so that we start the face at the same position. That just makes it so that it always sounds strong and powerful. If I wanted something that had variation and didn't sound as static, then I would increase the ramp face up to just get a bit of movement on it, but I like having it down. From there, we're using a low 24 filter in order to remove some of the high end and make it sound more warm, more thick. The number next to the filter is just how strict the cut is. Usually the lower values are more for sounds like brassy sounds that you don't really want to cut the highs or you want to control the highs a bit. And 24 are good for bass lines or when you want to remove a lot of high end and make the sound a lot more warmer. Okay, from there, we have distortion, called asymmetrical. That just means the top right and top left don't look the same. This leads to distortion that's a little bit more sound designing, not as blobby like a diode or a tube distortion. Boom. From there, we're using the pulse filter to remove some of the low end. Mainly because usually when you distort or saturate something, like, you know, we'll bring in frequencies all over the range, right, on the highs and the lows. And sometimes we might not want that. Some people say you can leave the lows that are added because they're negligent. It's just a tiny bit. But I'm always a bit, you know, I'm a more careful style of sound designer and producer where I keep it safe. But if you want to leave it, by all means, leave it. Now, or you want to remove the lows, by all means, go for it. From the EQ, we're going to reduce this a bit. The reason we cut here, it felt like they did it. So I decided to do that little cut there, which makes the saw just sound a lot tighter and more grungy in a sense. You know, there is a filter known as the notch, which looks like this, which people will use to kind of add this like movement to the sound. Very popular with the drum and bass guys, because then after this notch, they'll follow it up with heavy amounts of distortion. And this notch would influences the way the distortion does. This is what we would call a pre-filter. Okay, so from there we have compression, the OTT. It's a really good form of compression for dance music, you know, like I wouldn't use it for other stuff like putting it on the dulce voice. Oh my God. But the thing that it's doing, because a lot of people are always asking, you know, they're like, I want to see how it works. Essentially you have upwards expansion happening with the greens and downwards compression happening with the browns. So you pretty much have downwards compression, which reduces volume as the threshold is hit, and upwards expansion, which increases the volume as the threshold is hit. So you pretty much squashing that thing from all angles, man. The walls of Jericho are squashing the sound, but we're just going to use the one from Serum. It's the one I used. Now, the thing about this bass that really caught my eye was just the programming of it, because I'm so used to hearing the bass doing this, where like many people will program it like this. And it sounds dope too. But the thing he does is he grabs those middle notes, as you can see, and in order to make the beat just, you know, accented, make it feel more jumpy, bouncy, he goes up an octave, which sounds dope. He also does these two here. I chose not to do it just to say, I'm a little different, but at the end of the day, I'm being inspired by the great. So something that you could probably do with your bass line is look for notes that you can put up an octave. Another thing that you can also do is go up a seventh. So that would also be another good alternative to this. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It still sounds badass. It sounds more like Britney Spears at this point now, which is still dope, man. It's all dope, man. We get to make music. It's all fucking dope. Now, a lot of people will always ask me, yo, Sen, when should I use a sub? I watch all these videos and sometimes people will be using subs. Sometimes they won't. Like, I really don't know what's right or wrong. I think the important thing is to understand why we use a sub. And the reason we use a sub is because when we cannot guarantee the bass from this guy is going to sound at its strongest every single time it hits, then we use a sub. So obviously we process the crap out of it. We did OTT, we removed some of the lows. So this is when I might choose to say, you know, we need a sub for this sound. However, if the sound was very basic, like a tech house bass with just a saw, then I would say maybe you don't need a sub unless you're looking to process the saw and make it sound more like side piece versus a warm saw sound like Chris Lake, right? So those are things to keep in mind. The why will always be just having more control, because the integrity of the saw, we can't guarantee that it's going to have strong low end throughout. So that's where a sub will come into play. For this, I don't know if he did this, again, because disclaimer, these are just what I assume he did. I'm definitely certain he will probably use the sub, mainly because since the notes are jumping up and down like this, you're always getting out of the range of the sub sweet spot, which just means that, you know, if I play the bass here, then that's in the sweet spot. But if I play up here, this is not in the sweet spot. This is way too high up. Now from there, the drums in this track are going to be the traditional 909s. So as a sample pack maker, I'm always like, damn, more 909s. But the way that I choose to kind of add value to these samples for you guys is by processing them for you so that you sound your best. However, if let's say that you wanted to do it yourself, you can go and grab the chord kit. I say, you know, if you're going to buy my packs because you're looking for 909 samples, don't do that. Just use the 909 chord kit and process them yourself. Ableton will have a great selection of drums. I've processed the crap out of their drums. They are not clean. That's all I'm going to say. So that's how I know they're legit 909 drums that Ableton actually recorded for you guys. However, the recording, once you process them, aren't the greatest. So keep that in mind, but there you go. So from there, here we have the standard 909 kick. I've chosen to EQ it this way. Main reason is here I'm adding more presence, more click to the kick, and here I'm reducing a bit on the body. A cool way for you to kind of see what you're doing to your kick is to use something like Kickstart 2, and you can see the shape of the kick. And as you do things to the kick, you'll notice, okay, we reduce here. You can see you're reducing that middle portion, the body portion of the kick. The transient portion is that initial spot. So if I boost here, you can see that I increase the kick there. And if I want to increase the tail of the kick, which where majority of the low end content is, I will do it here. Okay. So let's go back to what we had. So this is why we did that. So for instance, here I might choose to go boost a little more. I'll reduce the body a bit, boost the highs a bit. And we can go a little broader here, like that. It goes into this kind of kick, and that looks fairly nice. And now, okay, EQing kicks, processing kicks is a damn, you know, it takes time. So just make sure you find the right kick, and doing things like this to accent and shape it into your track is important, because for some tracks, this might work. For me, I'm just too much of a clean producer. I hate hearing that. So I'll reduce just a tiny bit. For me are the drums. He makes them wide, and there's a couple of ways to make drums wide. The first one is using the Ozone Imager, which is the way that I decided to go, because when you collapse it into mono, it sounds the same. So I don't know how they're doing this to get it to sound wide, but that's the cleanest way to do it. And anytime I hear drums that are wide, I'm always like, how the hell did they do it? So there's a couple of things you can do. The second way, right? The first way is the Ozone. The second way is this Align, which I don't really recommend too much. I think this works good on synth sounds, but with drums like this, where you have heavy amounts of transients, the part, you can do this, and I think it sounds a lot cleaner than the Ozone. But then the problem with this, and you know, this is what people criticize this for, is when you mono it, put it down the center, it loses so much power. Sounds like caca. And the lower I go, you can see, you hear the phasing. So this is not what you want. However, on synth sounds, it's not as bad. But again, you know, you can use this Align delay. I think it sounds a lot better in stereo systems than the Ozone one. But the problem with this is if you go to one speaker format, let's say your track is played somewhere in Mexico where they don't have a stereo, then there you go, man. But the main thing Because you can do that. Now the clutch way and the more advanced way I would say is to duplicate your hats, pan one left, pan one right, hard, and then say it sounds wide when it doesn't. I hate when people teach this technique, but the way that you get it to sound wide is you have to change the left and right. The left, that can't sound like the right because it collapses down to the center. So the easiest way to do this is just to pitch this guy a bit different. And now we get this width. So now if I mono this, it still sounds dope. It adds up. Now we get some good width. Okay, so those are 3 ways that you can widen your drums. Again, pick the one that resonates the best with you. You know, just go like, what way do I like? We got the ozone way, and then we got the pitch way. Okay, so from there, the open hat, standard 909 wide. Home rides. Okay, then the next thing is the clap. You know, this is one thing that many people fail when it comes to drums, and that is adding reverb to the drums. When you add reverb to the drums, right? Like this drum has a bit on it in the sample. You can use a reverb from Ableton, and you want to add a pre-delay. The pre-delay makes it so the reverb takes a little while to enter. So usually that's used because you want to allow the transient to hit, and then the reverb becomes part of the tail of it. Okay, so for instance here, if I highlight this, you can see it says 102. So that's going to mean about 102 seconds. That's how long, milliseconds, that's how long that's lasting. So you can put that somewhere around here. And you can see that it lags versus having it low. You just swamp the clap. And again, there is no right or wrong here. If you like the swamp of the clap, that's dope. That's what's intended. But usually with your music, you always want your drums to sound clear. So one way that you can create that is by going 100 or a little before that, and then adding that tail to the clap. Center it, widen the reverb, place it somewhere that you think it will fit, and then the tail. Okay, cool. So we've gone through a lot. The next thing is the melody of the song, which is pretty simple. But I always say, you know what? It's always nice to like look at these melodies and learn a bit. And what I mean by it is the shape of it, right? It's just going from the top to the bottom. And that's what creates the... Okay, so if you ever get stuck on a song and you hear this, maybe you could be like, oh, I can make my melody work its way from the top to the bottom. And that's one way of looking at the melodic shape of the track, which is a cool way of, again, getting inspired from other people. I believe a lot of you guys are amazing producers and sound designers. I know it. So sometimes I feel like I'm teaching you guys like very redundant stuff. But I think the only cool thing about this sound for you guys would probably be the envelope here, right? So the envelope, let's remove that. Here, we can route it to the coarse pitch of this sound, right? So without it, it sounds like this, which is still cool. But, in the words of Axwell, he would say that's some professor shit right there. The little thing that just gives it that it factor would be this decay or this pitch envelope here. We can move the pitch up by as much as we want. But then when we start moving this up, it creates that effect. But if we do it fast enough, it gives it that almost botanical sound, which I call it the Martin Garrix pluck because of Animals. If I were to do the Animals from back in the day, shit, I feel old, man. Nostalgia, right? Maybe that's why this sound works, man. A little bit of distortion. The distortion doesn't have to be at 100% all the time. You can run it in parallel. So let's see, without it, warmer. With it, more EDM-y. And it works really well, the track. And then, you get the vocal on top. Whatever she's saying, or he. All right, so I really like this song that I wanted to make a demo for Poppy Trance Volume 2. I remade some of the sounds. So if you like any of the sounds you heard, again, check out the pack, Poppy Trance Volume 2, 140 BPM. Goodness. From there, I do want to say, obviously, imitating people, I feel, is very simple because making music is simple. The hardest thing about music will always be the inception, the creation of the ideas from nothing. And this is where these producers shine and become top in their respective genres, right? And I feel it's always dope to learn from what they do. But at the end of the day, make sure to trust yourself, make sure to trust your thoughts, make sure to trust your initial ideas, and don't compare. Learn from this. Maybe use a 909 pattern like this and go with the kick and that bass, but make it your own. That's the most important thing, because I'm just here to help you guys get inspired to make the music that you want. If you guys enjoyed this video, like I said, you can check out Poppy Trance Volume 2 if you want to support the channel. And if you want to continue your knowledge forward, check this video out where I go over all the different types of bass lines and 140 BPM style dance music.